Full Disclosure Live, I'm Robin Farzad. Coming up, our special live show with the University of Richmond's Robbins School of Business. How can we leverage the network effects and hive mind of a live audience to help a guest with a life problem? I'll interview a young father whose family and professional lives have, in less than 12 months, been devastated by this pandemic. Hear his story, see his resume, help him figure out the best paths ahead. Stay with us. Full Disclosure is made possible by the University of Richmond's Robbins School of Business, offering undergraduate, graduate, and executive education programs. The Robbins School prepares students to be global business leaders, providing a dynamic learning community where real-world teaching practices, scholarship, and service are at the forefront of the curriculum. More at robbins.richmond.edu. And by Solomon & Ludwin, a boutique wealth management firm dedicated to helping families make smart financial decisions. You worked hard and sacrificed to create and build wealth. They treat advice given to you with the respect your journey deserves. For over 30 years, Solomon & Ludwin has earned a reputation of trust and confidence. Recognized by Barron's as a Hall of Fame advisor. Learn more at salomonludwin.com. Full Disclosure podcasts on NPR One, Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts at link fulldradio.com. Please subscribe. Follow on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at fulldradio. Joining me, and for those keeping score at home, on mute for at least the first part of this show, nearly 130 professional students and mentors eager to hear his story and help him forge the path ahead. But joining me is Greg Franklin, 36-year-old, father of 2 young kids, job seeker, and I have to give you props, Greg. You agreed to do this, to open up your job search and your family crisis and your professional search to the hive mind of the community. Welcome to Full Disclosure.
You really sold it to me. You made it sound exciting and fun, and here I am. I'm excited.
Well, I have to tell you, Greg, when I think about this, we were sitting on a bench watching a basketball game about a year ago at the local kids basketball league, and I was remarking on how big your children were. And the next thing I recall is this email that went out, and your wife was having seizures and she was in a coma. All that happened within less than a year. Take me back to where you were a year ago and what transpired.
Well, a year ago, we started out the year of 2020 doing great. Everything was going well at work for my wife and I. The kids were blossoming in school, and everything was good. Till one day in March, my wife got sick. She was laid up in bed for a week with a febrile illness and took a week off work for sickness for the first time in her career. And that Saturday, we were having some family time in the morning, painting together actually, and then decided to go for a picnic. She told me she couldn't point to any symptoms, but she felt worse than she had in her entire life. And 20 minutes later, as we're packing up the car, she collapsed, having a grand mal, or a generalized seizure, convulsions, and all of that. Really quite scary. She never had an issue with this before, and we were scared. And I saw everything, the kids saw everything, and they're still dealing with that trauma. I suppose I am too. Following that, she had another seizure getting into the ambulance a couple minutes later, and then another one in the ER 2 hours later. And this is all grand mal convulsive seizures. They tried to stop it with medicine, and that was not working. She was in the ICU, neurologic ICU, for a week and a half at Bon Secours Hospital. And after 5 days, I had to leave her there, basically unconscious. Our last conversation before I left, she didn't know who I was. And I left her a letter and said goodbye. And then I talked to doctors daily the rest of the time she was there. This whole time, we had a sneaking suspicion that she had COVID based on the fact she did a very public event right before she got ill. However, they weren't giving tests to anybody at that time, really. And it was just difficult at that time to get a test for COVID.
Now, you're 36 and your children are 7 and 5.
Correct.
Yeah. You moved to the Richmond area back in 2016.
Yeah.
Everything happened in rapid succession. I understand that your family got ill.
Yes, my daughter was sick. I was sick.
And you decided to gather your wares from the office and to work at home. How did all of this unwind? I mean, because the Henrico school system also decided to go remote. I mean, you talk about life happening.
Yeah, so right before everyone decided to go to work from home and school at home, I took my kids out of school at the JCC. I went to work Thursday morning and I grabbed my stuff and said, I'm going to work from home until we know more. And I'm scared about this. And my wife is sick and she might have something and I don't know. So we went home and we were prepared to ride out the storm there. And our storm just got worse that weekend. We were dealing with COVID, kids at home, my wife in the hospital, and I'm trying to manage that. My in laws luckily live nearby and were able to help out. They live up in the DC area, so it's not right next to home for them, but they were able to stay for a while to help with the kids while my wife was in the hospital. I was mentioning the COVID test. This isn't 100% relevant, I guess, since she was found not to have COVID, but that very well could be because of the medications that she was on due to the seizures, which have a known impact on the efficacy of the tests. So I had to reach out to the governor's office and the epidemiology office for Virginia. I was in touch with a number of individuals in
Hmm,
the state senate,
sure.
and just trying to get all the people I could to get the test. And we finally got it, but it was 2 weeks later, and it took another 2 weeks for it to come back to us. By that time, she transferred to VCU Hospital, where she remained for another 3.5 weeks in a coma, multiple different comas, because each time they took her out, there was no improvement in her condition, or in fact, a worsening of her condition. Eventually, she received a treatment, an autoimmune treatment, that brought her out of the coma with functional brain activity. It took a number of days, and I actually had to say goodbye to my wife again when doctors told me she wasn't going to make it. But that night, after we talked to her and I said goodbye for the final time, what I thought, she started to tear up, and the doctors were amazed. And I went to bed praying and talking to myself and talking to Jody, talking to God. Woke up the next morning, and I woke up to her nurse FaceTiming me and telling me to hurry up and get on video so that I could see Jody. She was awake and looking at me. Couldn't talk, couldn't do anything, but she was awake and functional, at least, not brain dead.
How were you functional as a father and as a professional at the same time? Because I remember the appeal for family leave days. If you could quickly explain that your wife is a long-time federal government employee, and
Yeah.
these things are fungible, and people can donate leave to help her extend out the time that she can be in rehabilitation.
Yes, they can. And without that program, I don't know what we'll be doing right now. So I took some time off of work, some leave, rest of my PTO that I had, and then I was on FMLA, which was for COVID reasons to take care of a loved one or children that were in need due to the COVID response. Without my wife having the ability of that donated leave, I don't know what we do because she's still on leave, on medical leave donated by employees, and she's receiving her paycheck, and I'm out of work since August. So, without that, we're very fortunate to have it, let's say. Uh,
Now, Greg, she spent 7 weeks in the hospital
mhm.
and came back in, but this didn't even begin to be the end of it because work crept back on you. Your particular sector, you're involved in commercial real estate, and hotels are suffering from, low single digit occupancy, and suddenly the hammer is on you to produce, to be burning the midnight oil. You're worried about your children. I mean, your sister-in-law came down, but it's very difficult with social distancing and in the house, and mental health distance, and having the distance within work from home, which is both a blessing and a curse. Tell us about how that backed up on you professionally.
Right. So for a while, I did have care at the house for the kids with my wife's parents and then my parents coming into the house, but they were both afraid of COVID as well and basically bunkered up at home. I was able to get my sister-in-law to come down to take care of the kids and gave me promise that she'd be here for 2 months to do that. And unfortunately, due to just personal circumstances, she had to leave. And I was left taking care of the kids, taking care of Jody. My wife at this time needed physical therapy. She needed help walking upstairs. She needed help going to the bathroom at night. I had to help her with everything, get her dressed, and she couldn't remember a whole lot, and she just wasn't self sufficient. So I was managing that, doing just keeping my kids busy during the day, and then working as much as I could during the day. I had specific times where I had to be in meetings, and then I was burning the midnight oil. Like you said, commercial real estate industry was hit very hard, and I worked in hotels partially, and my properties were struggling very much so, and investors wanted information daily on the prospects and the forecasts, and I started reforecasting everything for each of my properties every single day, which is something I normally would do every month. And I was still managing my other office and medical properties at the same time. It was a great deal of work, a lot of conversation back and forth, which was difficult to manage. But I was doing my best. And, at one point, it just became clear that my family had to take precedence and I couldn't do all of it. So in August, my company and I split ways and decided it was time to just focus on my family.
Focusing on your family, tell us about the childcare aspects of it. You have two young children, 5 and 7, and you are effectively the Zoom parent now. I mean, your wife is still struggling. You're saying that the switching of medications has now
Yep.
become the flashpoint, and there are varying levels of mood and lucidity, and you have to keep the kids at a distance, and you have to make sure the kids are fed. Like, I cannot imagine, what you're going through. You and I first met in your backyard in a distanced
Yep.
fashion, and you even had to be delayed in seeing me because Jody was having a tough afternoon.
Yeah,
Um,
there are definitely difficulties.
just illustrate that for us briefly.
Well, medications are really the hardest thing to deal with right now. My wife has epilepsy now, and she will have seizures probably the rest of her life. But the goal is to manage that while allowing her to be mentally cognitive, able to do her job, and also have the energy to exercise and take care of herself and take care of kids. So if we can get those three things all together, that's the goal. Those two things and not having seizures, that's the goal. So we've been trying to reduce certain medications that are really bad for your long-term health. And as we did that, she had another seizure and then another one and another one. So we had to increase medications again, which put her into basically a state where she could not balance or function much on her own. And this is as late as November. We did another week stay at a hospital to do some testing and examinations and change medications again. And after that, she again had seizures and violent mood swings, just because of the medication. So it's something that, while it's a disease that might be under control, the medication side effects are absolutely out of control and difficult to deal with. Fortunately, after a lot of issues earlier in January and some seizures in January, she's on the same medications now for the next couple of months, and hopefully we don't see anything happen during that time. And in the next step down, we see another improvement without any negative side effects.
Full disclosure, I'm Robin Farzad. You're listening to Greg Franklin. He's a 36-year-old job seeker. We're doing a special live Zoom show with the University of Richmond's Robin School of Business. How can we leverage the network effects of our audience in attendance tonight? The community members, the mentors, the professionals, the students, the faculty, to help a guest like Greg with his life crisis. Greg's personal and professional lives in less than 12 months have been utterly devastated by this pandemic. Greg, tell us about the path ahead. You now have 14 years of professional experience. When I was talking to you, you said that, when you were an undergrad, you had this, in your guileless undergrad days, you wanted to be a prop trader and everything.
Right.
And life happened. Next thing you know, 10 years pass, you're going from a job to a job. You were in Chicago, you come to Richmond, you're a financial analyst. All of these things that you've now input into your kind of experience mind, and everything that has changed in the past year with work from home, with family demands, and everything that you're going to need to be the father first and foremost, and the professional, and a person that especially is bringing in a paycheck at a time when you don't know how much your wife is going to be able to work when work does return.
Right.
What kind of job are you looking for? Again, Greg's resume is up on our chat function. You can check it out as a PDF. Go ahead.
Well, primarily, the job title I'm generally looking at, because it closely aligns with my goals, is senior financial analyst. What I've really enjoyed about my career is taking financial data or operational data, turning it into creating actionable insights that I can use to help inspire others to make decisions or influence others to make the proper decisions. I've worked on a number of high profile projects within my companies across the organization, starting with staffing within call centers, lead productivity, and acquisition cost efficiency for call centers, and worked in revenue metrics and KPIs for sales teams, all the while performing monthly financial analysis, looking at variance analysis, sensitivity analysis, creating valuation reports for properties. I think I've run the gamut on types of financial reports that I provide and that I'm skilled and experienced at preparing. And I just want to be able to use those skills to influence decisions in an organization.
What about the sectors? As you see, I have a face for radio and I'm passionate for radio after years of writing. But if I weren't doing this, I'd probably have a Persian food truck, you know, and travel the world and find fine Persian spices.
Well, I would eat at your Persian food truck.
Thank you. What would make your heart hum? What do you think would make? I won't say self-actualize, but at least when I became a father, I started reprioritizing these things again. Was you definitely could not have a job that you were afraid of or that you were not passionate about. To the extent that this is a broad reset, what sectors beckon you? What callings? What kinds of missions?
Well, right now, I think something that's been in my mind that's important to me is I want to work in a company, in an industry that gives back in some way, that the company either has a strong community presence, strong philanthropic presence, or an industry that, as I think I told you earlier, some previous time, that a lot of the industries being formed in technology are younger generational people that have a passion for something and are creating a company out of a product that really is important to them for some personal reason. And I can find something, whether it's educational technology or financial technology, to give equal opportunity. Those are two examples of areas that I'm looking at. And I just want to find a company and a role in which I can influence change for the better.
Mm. You mentioned fintech, which is clearly exploding at
Yeah.
this time. We're in a fintech type community. Capital One, for example, talks a lot about this. Are you wedded to Richmond, or does Richmond matter as much anymore in that suddenly a lot of people who were working in New York and DC can work from home in Richmond? Again, how WFH and remote has become a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, it's a blessing in that I'm able to look for roles anywhere in the country where I can work here in Richmond, and that is my goal, to stay in Richmond. I've moved around a bit in my life. Yeah, after school, I went to Chicago, then to DC for my girlfriend at the time, now wife. We had a family and decided to move back to Chicago, where I'm from, and have lots of family. However, it wasn't ideal for my wife, and we decided together that we loved Richmond and want to be here. And ever since we came back, we've just been loving it, want to stay. This is our home and where we set down roots, and I want to continue to grow those roots.
Tell me about the search, the process. This is, in addition to being a public health crisis, maybe a once in a 100-year pandemic, it's also a bona fide financial crisis. It is a true reset. They talk about the K shaped recovery where asset prices and stocks and Bitcoin and real estate and GameStop, I guess, are surging, where
Oh boy.
even if you disregard the core unemployment rate, the level of misery out there and uncertainty and people on furlough and wage cuts, and to take meetings with people and the Zoom fatigue, I imagine it's frustrating on balance.
It is frustrating. I've had a couple of career searches in my career at this point. This one, it's such a broad number of avenues for employers to be looking for candidates and candidates to be able to find their employers. LinkedIn is a great resource, Indeed.com, great resources, and there's so many websites. It's just hard to keep track at this point. Honestly, I'm trying to meet people through my network and through contacts, which in Richmond is not that great. I'll be honest. I've only been here for 3 years and I've worked in the same company the whole time with more of an inward facing role. But I meet great people like you through my children's school, and I meet people at parks, and working that way right now. But honestly, it's exhausting.
How do you it's exhausting, and people taking Zoom calls, and it's a you
A
know,
lot of Zoom calls.
I do miss the coffee. I do miss the breakfast. I don't know if it's an extroversion thing, but to see the whites of the person's eye, and we'll get there soon again with the vaccine, God willing. How much is that going to change your normal when your in-laws, for example, are able to get vaccinated and to come down?
I think it will greatly improve my normal. We haven't left my house really since early November, except to go to Cleveland Clinic for a week and get some medical tests done. I've been home. I haven't gone to stores. We get our groceries delivered, and my in-laws have had their first vaccine. So once they get their second, they're planning on coming down and giving me and Jody a little break. It'll be nice. But honestly, right now, once the vaccine is more widespread and once I'm able to procure work, I'll be able to get somebody to be on call at the house just in case there is an issue with my wife. So right now, I'm not concerned daily that there's going to be a problem, but there's always the possibility. And so I want to be here to care for her. But as soon as I'm able to work from the office and be able to bring somebody in the home, I'm ready to do that as well. I think working from home and working remote is great. I think we need that flexibility, but I'm also ready to be in the office collaborating and communicating with the people that I work with in person. I really enjoy that aspect of of my job.
Tell us what you hope to get out of this experiment. And again, I thank you again. And for those joining late, I persuaded Greg to do this. This is something that he was self-effacing about. His first reaction was, "Why me? Why not someone else?" Well, there will be other people, but I said, let's take a really hairy, intimidating one at the very outset. That we're within a year of this striking his family, and let's see how much of our hive mind we could put at work. What is your ideal outcome out of tonight? So this call ends in an hour. Is it meetings with people, more Zoom people, leads? How should this work if it does work?
I mean, that benefit to my career and my job search would be fantastic if I can find some people to talk to and get some leads. Obviously, I'm looking for every opportunity right now, and that was one thing about this that was exciting. And another aspect was just help inform people that anything can happen at any time, and your life can turn upside down. Just be prepared for it and have precautions in place, or plans in place that you can weather the storm. There are a lot of students potentially on the call, and I think maybe it'd be something to tell them that my wife and I are lucky. We've been fortunate to save, fortunate that she works for a company that is able to provide her the benefit of being paid while she's on leave for an extended period of time. Things like that really make a difference. And one other thing is just to bring to light her story and what we've gone through this past year. Something that I've taken out of it that I didn't really consider all the time before is that there are a lot of invisible illnesses out there. People are going through things that you don't see on the outside. Whether it's depression or epilepsy or difficulty dealing with medications, or whatever it may be. People are having a hard time on a daily basis, and you just can't tell from the outside. So I've learned from this past year to give people grace, and just give people benefit of the doubt, and give them some space when they need it. Be flexible. So that's one thing I've taken out of this that I'd like to just pass on.
Tell us about your wife's prognosis and how the kids are doing.
Prognosis is she has epilepsy. We're going to have to deal with that fact. And our goal is to get her on a combination of medications that keep her seizure free as much as possible, give her energy, and allow her to get back to work. Right now, she's on leave through April 30th. Thanks to everybody who's donated leave that has let her take leave until that point. After that, I really think that she'll be okay to start work once these medications start to wind down in her system and make it easier for her to be more cognitive. And prognosis with the kids is they're doing okay. There's a lot of trauma. They're talking with somebody now that's helping them out, but it took us 9 months just to get a therapist for them because they're overloaded with new patients. They're doing everything virtual, and there's a lot of kids that are dealing with a lot right now too. I think we'll come out of this better, stronger, and God willing, it will be in the near future.
Tell us how the community has responded. I mean, I have etched in my recollection the fact that when your wife collapsed and the children had to witness it and everything in your driveway, that a father across the street left his kids
Yeah,
to run over and kind of help you triage. Tell us the continuum of this. Yeah.
our community's been fantastic. We got a huge response from the neighborhood. Everybody wanted to drop off groceries or bring things for the kids to have fun. The teachers at the JCC put together packages of art supplies for the kids to have something to do during the day and ease my life a little bit. We had friends that sent them toys, Lego sets, and everything. The neighbors help take care of them if we ever needed it, to go to the doctor or something like that. But like you said, that morning that my wife did collapse, I flagged down a neighbor who ran over. Two other neighbors saw the ambulance and came over and decided to take the kids over to their house to play while I went to the hospital. And we get constant texts and emails and calls from neighbors just asking how they can help. And at this point, we don't need daily help. So my answer is I don't know. But if somebody's willing to offer assistance, or just a kind word, we're willing to take it. So that's not to say we're asking for anything.
And look, I don't want this to sound cliche or tacky, but I think about this a lot. An a critical inception point for an adult. I was talking to my high school economics teacher when he came. He was driving through Richmond in his RV 5 years ago, and he said, "Your new normal, your life, your consciousness as an adult really begins the year that you graduated from college." What would you tell that Greg Franklin in 2007, which was a lifetime ago? I mean, it was on the eve of a whole different financial crisis. If somebody had looked into a crystal ball and told you, to the extent that there are students out there, undergrads, graduates, alums listening, what, if anything, can you share with them?
Um, be prepared as much as you can. Work your network, talk to your professors, talk to people in industries that you're interested in, find out if it's really what you want to do. As you mentioned before, I thought about being a prop trader when I came out of college. That was actually my goal, and then I'd move forward in my career from there. I got offers as a prop trader and decided that the 100% commission setup wasn't for me, and I just wasn't ready for that lifestyle. And I didn't totally consider that before, I guess. I'm sure I did, but when it became real, I just couldn't handle it. So I moved into a different career path, which at that time was not easy. In 2008, 2009, finding the right role in finance was hard to come by. So I'd just say get your cards in order, know if what you're looking at is really what you want to do, and make sure you talk to people and understand that. Another factor is work your network, work LinkedIn. I'm dealing with that a lot right now. And, it wasn't always a top priority for me as I was working. I have, like I said, an inward facing role. I'm not looking at outward customers or bringing in new clients or anything like that. So I didn't use LinkedIn much except for job searching when I would grow my network and end up with hundreds of recruiters that I'm connected to.
And to that end, your LinkedIn profile is now up on the chat function. My brother neatly copied and pasted it, and
Okay.
he's going to ask if you're looking for full-time work only or open to project or contract work quickly.
I'm open to project work, primarily looking at full time, but I've worked projects before, and I think I'm good at getting running quickly.
Full disclosure, stay with us. Full disclosure, I'm Robin Farzad. If you're just joining us, we are talking to Greg Franklin, age 36, a young father whose professional and personal lives have been devastated in less than 12 months of this normalcy, this terrible normalcy of the pandemic. We just listened to his story, and we are at that phase where we want some professional panelists and mentors to come on. I do want to read a sentiment, Greg, before we get in that was shared on the chat function, because we are, after all, doing this and everything else in our lives on Zoom. From Marissa to everyone, Greg is beyond brave and courageous to be vulnerable and share his story wisdom with us. I am inspired by his honesty and authenticity. Though my offices are New York-based, I am happy to try and share my network to help him, and I am proud to be a spider. I have had to diversify my focus and have 2 clients now in the financial space, which is a far cry from my fashion and media space. Can't hurt to try and connect. Greg Franklin's LinkedIn particulars are up on the chat function. And for those of you listening on radio, it's all up on fulldradio.com and Twitter at fulldradio. I'd like to bring in Shayna Cook. Dr. Shayna Cook, are you there?
I am here. Can you see me?
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Shayna Cook is VP of Human Capital at Dominion Payroll. We love doing events at Dominion Payroll. It's a very kind of work culture centric firm, and you were recommended by some creative co-collaborators I have there, and Kevin Wilson and Brad Crouch. Talk to me. Talk to Greg. Go ahead.
Hey, well, thanks for having me on. Greg, your story is incredibly inspiring and just really hard to kind of wrap your brain around. So I really, I applaud you for your resilience right now. This is probably the last thing that you want to be doing right now is trying to find a new career path for yourself. But I think that the way that you're handling this with such grace is really admirable.
I appreciate that. I really do. Thank you.
Who should he be talking to, Shayna?
That's a great question. So, you did talk a little bit about using networks and LinkedIn, and I think, that's probably a good place to start. I would say in terms of your learning and development, reaching out even further, right? So just discussing with other people about this transition, reaching out to recruiters, local, national recruiters, I think would be really helpful. Friends or ex-colleagues. And even if it's ex-colleagues that maybe you had some rubs with or ex-bosses that maybe you didn't necessarily connect with, to kind of get their feedback and perspective on you in the workplace and your strengths and your growth areas. I think that could be really helpful for you to get a maybe even a more clear picture of what you're presenting when you're out there in the world, for sure.
Okay. Yeah, it's a solid piece of advice.
Go ahead. I'm going to get to brass tacks with you at Dominion Payroll. You guys are so diversified across sectors. You're in fintech, restaurants. I mean, the diaspora of people that come to your client base. Are there any people in town? Are there companies that come to mind for, you think a personality or resume fits for Greg?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. We do have quite a wide network of contacts that we can absolutely try to explore with Greg to see if there's some interest there. We're also really well connected with some recruiter firms in town. And so that also might be a good option to just kind of get in there and say, here is who I am, and what do you think? But I would certainly challenge Greg right now as well in this pivotal moment in life to really think about what it is that you love, right? Like what makes you happy, and when you are happy, what are you doing? I did hear you say a couple things. I was taking some notes while you were talking, and you said that you like to look at financial data because creating actionable insights to help others make informed decisions for themselves. And for me, that's your why, right? Like that's your purpose. Your purpose is to help educate people so that they can make educated decisions for themselves in their financial sector. And so if that's what really you love and drives you, where else does that show up in your life? Does it have to be in the financial sector, or can it be a different sector?
I'm not necessarily looking just at a financial sector. I've actually worked in corporate finance in FP&A, and I find that role generally what I'm looking for in terms of what I want to do. I find turns up most often in a senior financial analyst role, but it's really like an internal consultant working throughout the organization to enact change and create insights from data, like you mentioned.
Yeah, I think to me, that sounds inspiring, right? Like trying to help other people figure out what they're doing with their finances to impact their lives. I think that's really interesting. I also wrote down that you're looking for a company or an industry that helps give back to the community in which they live or serve. And I think that also that strong community presence is probably something to anchor yourself to, because that sounds like a little piece also of where you find your purpose in life, right? In the way that you also give back to your community.
Thank you, Shayna. I'm so grateful.
Absolutely.
We're gonna bring in Sid Pila. He's CEO of Sunny Day Fund. I met you through Lighthouse Labs in a cohort presentation. Sid, by way of quote, say he started Sunny Day Fund because he knew what it was like to live with financial insecurity and instability, and believes strongly that Americans should have better options to save and plan for their futures. COVID has changed the way we save, understand our own finances, and view our social responsibilities. Sir, how are you? Chime in.
I'm doing great. Thank you so much. And Greg, I really appreciate you sharing your story. It gives me courage knowing what you've gone through, that you're here speaking about it, because these are just not nuggets of wisdom. This is wisdom in general. This is awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing the story.
Thank you, sir.
From Sunny Day Fund's perspective, I'd love to chat with you because I think that there's definitely ways that we can collaborate. But I also wanted to share that I just checked with my wife that works in hospitality, who has an FP&A function and actually has a role that is probably a great fit in Northern Virginia area. So I just wanted to share that in case there's any interest. I did have a question for you. As you're thinking about your future, what is something that you know that you don't want to do? Because that's sometimes a guiding force as well.
Sure. So one thing I've mentioned a couple times is something I don't want to do, and I know this is part of the career path I'm looking at, but I don't want it to be the only thing that I'm focused on, is having a job that's too consistent, too much monotony, where, in asset management and commercial real estate, I found myself doing variance analysis and month-end close almost constantly because our properties had different timelines throughout the month. So I'd close one, move on to the next, close that one, move on to the next. And I felt like I was doing the same thing constantly and didn't have enough time for the more important ad hoc work or project work that I think could improve things. So I want to be able to focus on more important projects and not just have monotonous, repeatable projects. And part of that comes with being able to streamline processes, but there's only so much you can do sometimes without the time to do it.
Thank you, Sid. We have Kelly Chopis, the CEO of the Robbins Foundation, on standby. She's on Lend-Lease because I like to say presumptuously, Kelly, that you're one of my mentors. Are you there, Kelly?
I am. So, Greg, I'm really impressed with what you've been able to share with us today. And I'm going to double down on what Shayna said and then Sid said, which is please come over to the nonprofit sector. Please come over to philanthropy. Please come over to our side of the universe, because great things happen with people who are passionate about their calling, their want to give back, the missions. And I think it would be a wonderful place for you. I think you have had a couple of big punches in the gut, and I find that those people are the best ones to serve other people, right? And if you have that calling, one inkling, I want to talk to you separately. One question I had for you was, do you feel like you could almost do CFO work in the nonprofit arena? That is such a big void right now. We need a lot of really good, talented people to help our nonprofits not only sustain themselves, but sort of be strategic about how they're spending money, how they're looking for money. I feel like you have really great experience at a lot of CFOE kind of things. What would you say to that?
I mean, I'd say it's a possibility. It depends on the size and complexity of the organization, obviously. Not having that experience before, I have worked closely with CFOs and directors of finance on a daily basis. So, I know a great amount of what they do. And I think I could flex a lot of my skills to manage those processes as well. But like I said, it depends on the size and complexity. And it's a conversation I'd be willing to have. I'd love to.
And it's a big universe, Kelly, because everyone except Amazon is a nonprofit right now, right? No, just kidding. No. Thank you, Kelly. We have Andy Whitehouse. Sir, are you there? Creative co-conspirator.
I'm here, Robin. I don't think I can get my my video started either. I'm sorry about that.
Andy Whitehouse is CEO and managing partner of Copperfield Advisory. It's a consulting firm that serves clients across a variety of sectors. He was fascinated. We were introduced by a mutual friend, Stevie McFadden, in Richmond. He was fascinated when I brought up this example. He used to be the chief communications officer for IBM, Willis Towers, Watson, and McKinsey. He's also served as government policymaker in the UK and has led teams in the Prime Minister's Social Exclusion Unit and Department of Health. What say you to Greg?
First of all, it's great to meet you, Greg, and I'm so sorry about everything that you've been through with your family. And you're a brave guy and a really brave storyteller. And if there's anything I can do in terms of opening up my network, helping you out from here in New York City, I'd be delighted to do it. The question I wanted to ask you, Greg, was sort of what your friends would, how they would describe you, your friends, if they were going to be talking to a prospective employer and talking about who you are and your values and sort of the things that you bring to work that maybe aren't kind of like the hard skills, but more like the soft skills. What would be the sorts of things that your friends would talk about?
Well, I think kind, funny, sometimes sarcastic. I like to interact with people on a very personal basis, and I think that comes across in how I do my work as well. But I think personal relationships are very important. I play with my kids' friends. My wife and I always joke that when all the other parents are having fun together, me and her are stuck playing with the kids just because that's what we end up doing. It's what we enjoy is just sharing in the community. And, I always want to give back. I don't necessarily find enough time to do it in my spare time. But I think that's the kind of person they'd say I am.
Andy, you and I discuss things creatively. Like, when we're trying to thumbnail this show, you said you wouldn't be averse to bringing on someone from a reality dating show or completely throw convention into the wind, right? Everything is a great reset. Everyone is given a tremendous amount of leeway in terms of creative experimentation right now. You see some of the highest rated shows on quote unquote television are done over Zoom and with AirPods. How would you creatively kind of funkify this search?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Robin. And I guess what I would say is, the stories that people remember are stories that are full of emotion and that kind of connect with us on a really human level. And I think the folks who make reality television have got really great at bringing out in the audience their sort of anger and their sadness and their fear and the way that they can get to know and connect with the people on the show. And I would say, having listened to you, Greg, this evening, just talking about your story and things you've been through over the last year, I wouldn't underestimate the sort of the power of emotional storytelling in the context of your job search. When you find yourself in an interview, you're a great storyteller and you've been through a lot, and it really shows the kind of person you are, your character, your values, and what you stand for. So, people that in interviews often tend to go for the facts and the figures as the way of kind of selling themselves to the employer. That's not what we remember as human beings. We remember emotional stories and personal character and connections and those kinds of things. So I'd put those things right at the heart of your search.
Thank you, Andy.
Okay. I appreciate that advice. I do try to be as conversational as possible and bring out more of a story than necessarily just facts and figures. So I'm glad that comes across.
Andy, I will put you in touch with Greg. Thank you so much. I do have Alex Derhovenesian on standby. Alex, are you there?
I am. Good evening.
Alex is a senior director at Q Larion, a professional services firm focused on helping public sector and health organizations use business intelligence. I call him, my nickname for him is State Farm because he's a good neighbor. Every time I see him, I peek over the fence. I was like, what can we do to collaborate to help people? But, if you want to open the kimono in this case, you too had a family health crisis. And you two are exceedingly mindful about how you were helped with the community and how you can help others. What would you impart? What kind of wisdom would you share with Greg?
Yeah, first, Robin, thank you again. And I think it's just humbling to see this many leaders and connectors from around Richmond and around the country on this call, and just an amazing experiment. So first, also, Greg, to you and Jody, you are surrounded by a village. And I think it's hard to see when you're in it. And I will tell you, and without oversharing, I went through a similar situation, but no situation is the same. But you will be challenged to look and raise up your head a little bit and look beyond your critical mass. But please know that there are a lot of people around you, both locally and beyond that, that are here for you. So I think there's a lot of tools out there, right? You have Virginia Workforce Centers, you've got Virginia Career Works portal. There are a lot of places where people can go, and Virginia's done an amazing job of trying to create opportunities. But I think you're absolutely right in saying that your next role is going to come from a relationship, an introduction, or someone that you have met along the way. So I think you're absolutely right in taking the time and using your network. I'd also tell you to make sure you're taking time for self-care and for family care. And you'd be like, well, I've taken a lot of time for family care, but you need to have that balance, right? So I think the self-care portion as well, and making sure that you're making time for yourself. I think some of the other panelists have said this as well, but find your happy and find things that make you happy and make sure you do those things along the way. Again, I'm talking fast. And I apologize, Robin. I'm trying to move through.
No, please.
I'd say there are a lot of great companies in Richmond and around the country, but I would not look for a great company. And I don't want to be offensive to any great company in Richmond. I would find a great boss or leader that inspires you. Because I can give you a list of a lot of great companies that have pretty average bosses. And you can work for a great company and be miserable, or you can work for someone that you trust and is inspiring to you, and that will change your entire dynamic. So please, as you're looking for a job, don't get lost in taking the first thing, or, this is a great company, I've got to get in there. Find someone you trust, find someone that you believe shares your values, and they will help you get from where you are to where you want to be.
Yep, I think you hit it spot on.
You pivot very effectively between Northern Virginia and Central Virginia. I feel like that area has kind of been, psychographically at least, it's looked like one contiguous region. There are a lot of people, especially with remote from home, and Capital One having those campuses both in Tyson and kind of, West Creek, that suddenly there are many more options, both in terms of people and companies.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we are becoming, a mega region around Virginia, right? You're talking about mega regions, and I think you're absolutely right. There's not a circle around Richmond anymore that is going to confine you to just looking in Richmond that will allow you to work remotely. I also think with COVID and with everything that everyone's going through, I think to the earlier panelist point as well, you telling your story is important, right? Not oversharing everything, but sharing enough so people understand who you are and your background is very, very important. And not just focusing on the work, but also focusing on work life as well. I'll also say to Robin's point, we are in a remote world now, right? So it does not have to be a Richmond. There are lots of Richmond-based companies, but there are a lot of great firms around Virginia, up and down the East Coast, that would welcome your remote work and your expertise. I've reviewed your resume, and I mean this sincerely. If it's not today or tonight or tomorrow, a year from now, I will do whatever I can to move you from where you are to where you want to be and help you connect to wherever you need to be to get to somewhere positive for you and your family.
That's very, very kind of you.
Well, thank you, Alex, for the advice and sincerity.
Thank you, Alex. Rich Ronick, are you online?
I'm here with you.
Co-founder of Fahrenheit Advisors, the giant fractional staffing firm in Scott's Addition. I'm reminded of your prophecy when I first met you 6 or 7 years ago that so many people are going to be remotely working. So many people want to juggle work and life this way. And there's so much vindication in what's gone on in the past year. I've made you aware of Greg's scenario because he could be a hired hand as a fractional CFO type or a person who could come into a situation and help model and build, what first comes to mind in terms of opportunities for him?
Well, first, Robin, I think your goal was to cobble this community brain trust to help Greg. And I think the first half of this show was really Greg helping all of us understand how fragile and quickly life can turn. And so, some of your comments, Greg, reminded me of, 2008 when the market sort of turned on all of us, and holy smokes, we were faced with a crisis. And, I was in a position where I had to make some decisions about my career path. And, I was surrounded by a community that helped me make those decisions. And tonight, I guarantee you, when you hang up this call, you're going to go to your LinkedIn and you've got 100 new friends, one of which is me. So yeah, Robin mentioned that Fahrenheit's a consulting and advisory firm, and we have an executive search and recruiting practice. As I reflect on our conversation tonight and how we might be able to help you, sure, maybe it's in project consulting or part of our team, or maybe it's part of our executive search practice. But I think one of the things that I'd love to be able to do with you directly is to work on the story of how you tell this story to employers, because obviously you're an incredibly likable guy and you've got a great personality that's going to shine through when you have a conversation with potential employers.
Yeah, I would absolutely welcome that. Thank you. I know that's one thing where I have a tendency just to tell the whole story because it's what I know and it's what I feel strongly about. So having some guidance there would be fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, what I would like to be able to do is how do we tell folks, how do we match up what you've done with some of the things that you talked about and highlighted in the beginning of this conversation with Shana? How do you take all this experience and influence change for the better in your next organization? And I think you can connect what you want to do next with telling people how you've done it before. So I think, after this call, let's connect one-on-one and let's develop that story so that as we start making introductions as a community for you, you're able to concisely tell that to whoever's going to be lucky enough to work with you next.
I appreciate that. I would absolutely take that opportunity. Thank you.
Rich, and take me out to lunch while you're at it as well. I'll never, once we're vaccinated and everything, you could.
Oh, he's buying lunch?
Hey, I'm coming to your Persian food truck.
Oh yeah, I'll bring that around again. It might end up being my career ultimately. I do see an applause from Laura Kottkamp. Laura Kottkamp of the friendly crosstown rival VCU School of Business. Dr. Laura Kottkamp, I believe. I call her like the human LinkedIn router. She's maybe the most connected person I know in Richmond. Are you there? Can you chime in?
I am. Robin, you're taking me back old school. I'm normally in like my jammies at this point. I feel like we're like legitimately back at a recruiting event. Stay dressed the whole day for everybody out there.
New frontiers.
You know what? Exactly. I love that we have a community that wants to welcome a discussion like this, and that makes me so happy. I am a multi-generation Richmonder. I came back because I believed in the power of Richmond, and this is exactly where I had always hoped Richmond would go when I came back after business school. I think there's always the chance to find any job. I think you want to find the right job. We have so many incredible people in Richmond, so anyone can find you a job. I think you have entered middle age earlier than some of us have entered middle age with health worries and family responsibilities. We've all had medical situations or mental health situations that come up in our family, and we're wondering how to balance everything. And so you're not alone, even though it feels very lonely. Middle age happens to all of us at some point. As you were talking, I had a list of people that I could instantly see you connecting with to get a better sense of who you are. I think one of the greatest gifts of Richmond's networking community is that people are happy to talk with you. It doesn't mean that they have a job to offer you. It does mean that when you talk with them, you might see a nugget in them that reminds you of yourself. I think about some of the people on this call who I've talked to at various points in a career move or a career switch. You will benefit from talking with people as you not only have to hone your story, but as you recognize the goodness in others. I think that'll bring some joy back into your heart. I'm thinking, and I know that some people will agree, that you've got the Melina Davises of the world who run the Medical Society of Virginia, business, and yet they're doing something great for healthcare. I could see you being involved with something healthcare minded after the scare that you've had.
It's definitely on my mind. Yes.
You could talk to, I think, Lynn Hughes, maybe, who's head of Comfort Zone Camp right now. You've got the Virginia Credit Union that does amazing things. Chris Shockley is the president of Virginia Credit Union and is one of the more caring people I know in Richmond. They are completely focused on giving back to the community.
What do you think? You introduced me to Brian Shaw, World Pediatric Project. He was previously at VCU.
He's on my list. I'm going to hold it up. Look, can you see that? I mean, look at that. He's there. Jane Henderson is going to retire from Virginia Community Capital, but that's all about, doing good while giving back to the community. VCU has got an awesome, I have to put in a plug, system, VCU Health. You've got Melinda Hancock, who's their CFO, that we could put you in touch with. I'm thinking of like Rachel Cohey, who does decision analytics down at McGuire Woods Law Firm. So they have a whole spectrum of law firms that need financial input right now. I'm thinking of Dominion, not just Dominion Payroll, but Dominion Resources, Dominion Energy. I have worked there. They are a stand-up organization that's got incredible ethical leadership. That'd be a great place. And they've got a ton of financial analysis that goes on. Real Estate Circle of Excellence at VCU. If you were interested in getting back into real estate, I think would be a great one. I would leave you with, your story is going to be so profound for people that will put their trust in you because you've put your trust in others. I think about a financial advisor role like Mark Newfield or Tracy Shackelford, who've just moved over to Bleakley Advisors. I mean, I could see people trusting you with their life savings because they're going to know that you had those very same issues to face. I think about Kathy Doss, who's at Federal Reserve. What an amazing organization to have the Federal Reserve here with us. That would be another one who you could talk to. She does data, basically smart data analytics. CoStar, Brad McGetrick is an awesome VCU alum of ours, runs the talent organization. Talk about real estate wisdom that you could impart. They're all about real estate and they're all about Richmond. Andy Florence, their CEO, moved CoStar's, HQ here just to support Richmond. Yeah. So there's so many people that I respect and love that are here in the area that could help you. And I can give you all of this after so that you weren't, I talk almost as fast as Alex D, but not quite. I almost wanted to I was like the cat. I was trying to reach through and bat it down. But Teddy Roosevelt has a quote that said, comparison is the thief of joy. And at many points in my life that has come up. It's often easy to think about what was and what your family once looked like. And you have got a great chance to create a whole new set of memories and a whole new set of careers. You're going to be working for another 40 years, which is a whole new thing for those of us in, a different generation. You're going to have a whole road ahead of you that will just be amazing. So I hope you don't have to look back. We're here.
Well, I appreciate that sentiment. It's definitely a way we look at life now.
That's a great one, Laura. You want to have a tea with Laura, and let me say, by way of disclosure, don't be surprised if another side outcome of this is Laura Kottkamp gets poached by the U of R. But I digress, as I normally do. Thank you, Laura. Before we get back to Dean Quinones, I want to read a quote in the chat section from Melissa Klein. Laura, love this way of thinking. We call this brand crushing, thinking about what lights your heart and look that way inside the box. Greg, it's hard naturally when your role was not out-facing, and doing this work takes work which you don't have extra time for right now. But your friend here set you up, and you will lead for others now. So glad I took the time to see this email and listen in. Fingers crossed Robin recorded this for you. I did! So your note-taking can keep up with these amazing guides. Dean Quinones, my creative co-conspirator in this, if you can please come back in. Take it back to the top before we open it up to the floor with the time we have left. What are your thoughts? What are your pieces of advice? There's clearly an alumni network. You are very mindful of the fact that life happens. You meet students in the kind of continuum of their professional existence. Talk to us.
Absolutely. First of all, this has been, Greg, thank you so much. And Robin, what a great idea. This has been really sense-making for all of us to be able to realize that we're all not just suffering alone, that all of us go through things and other people go through things. I would say in addition to the alumni network, I would go back and try to reach out to your classmates, some of the classmates that you had as your finance major. at the Robbins School. Some of the professors have very good connections locally and otherwise. So Professor Earl's still there. So I'm sure you had a class with
Is he
John
really?
Earl. Oh yeah,
I
he's
was
still
just
there.
thinking
Tom
about him
Arnold.
this morning.
Aha, yes. So John's still there. So I would certainly reach out. And in our alumni in career services, they like to say that they're career services for alumni for life. So certainly reach out to our career services group. And that would certainly be a great way to use the Spider Network. We already saw earlier on in the show how a fellow Spider chimed in and was offering for help. So I moved here about a year and a half ago, and I was just amazed how accessible this community is. And what we're seeing here, in this experiment of this hive mind, it really has just become a community gathering place. We see how this technology can be used to harness the power of this community, and I think we're onto something here. And we've just seen the generosity of this community and the care that I have encountered since moving to Richmond. So I think it's very inspiring and gratifying to see everybody chime in and everybody offer to help and everybody sharing stories. So thank you for letting us be part of this. I'm just really proud that the Robbins School is a place where we started this first.
Thank you, Dean. I wanted to share the news also, Greg, in case you haven't seen it, but there is a message from Mark St. Hilaire to everyone. Greg, I'm a recruiter with the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond. Thank you for the mention, Laura Kotkamp. Happy to connect with you or any others. Do feel free to connect here. He posted his LinkedIn. And Kelly Chopis of the Robbins Foundation just said she sent your resume to her CFO, who is deeply connected across the community. Greg, she says, I know he will call you. There's also Mark Bricky. Greg, I'll reach out to you via LinkedIn. I'm with the VEC. Anybody else that wants to come in? I call this part of full disclosure kind of free skate. If you're old enough to remember the roller skating rinks, this is where they would kind of turn on the air supply and couples could come on. People who wanted to showboat could come on. No, but in all honesty, if you are a member of the community at large, like an enthusiast like Kevin Wilson from Dominion Payroll, who's helped produce this show several times, Jennifer Barbin, I see you've been active on social media. All of this stuff, you guys can chime in with your thoughts. Kim Zaninovich, who's helped me produce. I see a kind of This Is Your Life of people who've helped with various live shows of full disclosure. What are your thoughts? Kim Zaninovich is there. Jennifer Barbin's there. Jump ball. What do you think, Kim?
I'm just so impressed by, first off, the candidness and the openness that, Greg, that you've shown. I mean, just as everyone has said, I know it's not easy out there, but it just takes that one meeting, as we all know, and that one connection that brings you through. I've been on chat with a couple of friends on LinkedIn, just in like the fintech area, the idea that you're kind of maybe interested in that. So I'm reaching out and seeing if anybody's got anything going on. And I think that this is going to be really fruitful for you. We've been in Richmond for like 6 years now, and it is so wonderful to see this community coming together. And then, Robin, how are you going to continue to expand this?
Well, we're going to bring in, if you guys have case studies and examples, take, for example, a mother who might be later in career, has a special needs child, wants to get back into the workforce, an older person who wants to shift, someone who wants to shift out of law school, someone who wants to go into not-for-profit work or entrepreneurial work where there's more of a kind of a Richmond Venture Forum or Shark Tank element to it. I think it's really scalable across the board. And Kim, you were there. We've done concerts with this show. We've done foodie application. By way of introduction, Kim Zaninovich is a wonderful producer at the Martin Agency that helped seed fund and produce this show at its inception back in 2014. And she's always been there as a sounding board back when we would go to Elwood's and people would do stuff like that. So she's a wonderful creative, a wonderful mother, another great preschool parent that I saw there every morning. So I wanted to bring her into this mix as well. Thank you, Kim.
Thanks for your comments, Kim.
Jennifer Barbin.
Yeah, Greg, I want to say, unfortunately, I've been in the job loss and getting back into the market and in a good place now, but people have been so much more graceful. I mean, any other time you may have lost a job, you got a sideways look. And this year is, of any year, people are more understanding, more willing to help, more willing to have conversations. And it has broken down so many barriers that may have been there in the past, because people, like you said, who thought they were safe have learned they're not. Unfortunately, no one is ever safe in their career, but it's building these connections. And, it's like, Robin, you are just doing such a great job of bringing this together. Mickey, it's amazing that you guys are sponsoring this, and you've got a great hive mind. I've been in Richmond 20 years, and you're right. Richmond's hard to break into when you first get here, but then once you do, oh my gosh, this community, and it's just gotten better and better and closer the longer I've been here. So I wish you the best of luck, and I know you'll do great now and wherever you end up. And wishing your wife well.
Thank you very much, and
Thank
I agree.
you. I do want to get Kevin Wilson in here. Kevin, where are you? Can you unmute? Can you come in? Kevin is also another creative co-conspirator. He's helped me pull off live shows at Dominion Payroll. And this is a person with inchoate leadership skills. 1 minute he's managing, what is the sushi joint in the Fan, introducing me to DJs and everything. He knows the entire RVA dining community. The next, he's hosting sessions about PPP financing for Dominion Payroll. Share your thoughts with us, sir. Meet Greg Franklin.
I can't believe you're calling me out, making me show my face here in my very professional T-shirt with Elvira hanging above my shoulder. But
it's all right.
Hey, let me just say, Greg. I was about to say fantastic story, moving story, emotional story. Connected with that, immediately, and I know that the future is very bright for anyone that is willing to have that vulnerability and that authenticity. I think that so often when we are considering, our professional careers, it exists in this buttoned up space that is, it exists within the lines of a resume. And I think increasingly the world of professional work, it needs that authentic human piece that you've brought here tonight. I will be shocked and dismayed if by this time next week, you're not fighting off several competing offers, frankly. But I think that, I wish that I could come with any better insight than any of the other very colorful and amazing guests. Laura is probably just rattling off names of people that you need to contact. And Robin's probably muted her, just saying we have to move on. But I think stay true to yourself. The advice of being that authentic version of who you are. You're going to be connected with so many people through this experience. But I would say that quite frankly, it's often dark before that sun peaks over the horizon. And I think that before you know it, that's going to be there. So best of luck to you. And really, this has been an inspiring program.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Close us out, Greg. Close us out. The mic is in your camp. What did you expect? I mean, again, I thank you for being brave enough to do this. I hope that there's going to be a lesson for so many people out there. I think that there's a good amount of community hand-holding that we feel like we're actually kinetic and doing something. But in closing, share your thoughts with us.
Just blown away by all the contributions tonight and everybody who showed up and came on screen to give their words of kindness or advice or offer up some solutions. I really appreciate every little bit of it. And thank you, Dean Quinones, for helping put this program on, and Robin for coming to me with the idea. It's like I said, you told me it was exciting and fun, and actually I've enjoyed it. I was a little scared coming in, but it's been really great. It showed how tight of a community Richmond is, and how I'm excited to be a part of it. Glad that I moved here a few short years ago. So thank you all. I feel like good things are coming, and I appreciate your kind words along the way.
Fingers crossed, and all I can say is Zoom Professional Network activate. Full disclosure, special thanks tonight to Claire Morgan at Notterly, our producer. A huge props to UR's Robin School Dean, Mickey Quinones, Andy Miner with Drill Sergeant efficiency, Courtney Ennis. Enjoy this fine podcast on Apple Podcasts at link fulldradio.com. Subscribe early and often. We are on NPR One and on Spotify. We are on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Full D Radio. You know what? This was risky, to be sure, but I do believe in my bones that it paid off. And we're going to do an exciting series with Dean Quinones. I'm holding you to it. CEOs, bands, chefs, authors, the culture of business, and the business of culture. I'm Robin Farzad. Full disclosure, back with you next week.